This morning I've popped down here to the shores of Loch Maree, and I don't really have a plan today. It's actually a bank holiday, it's St Andrew's Day, so I've got a day off work. So actually normally I'd be into my first cup of coffee at my desk this morning, so this morning it was just a case of not having to be at my desk, get out, enjoy some of the outdoors on a bonus morning off. And it's an absolutely glorious morning. We've got a very gentle breeze. There's a little bit of colour emerging in the sky. You can see there's a nice little cloud forming up on top of Loch. And yeah, I'm looking forward this morning to just having a slightly, hopefully relatively stress-free morning of photography. Nothing too energetic and not putting myself under too much pressure to take images. It's mainly just about getting out and enjoying the outdoors on a day like today. And I'm looking forward to it. So the first image which I've settled on is an image of this tree. So I was actually down by the shores of the loch, which was kind of where I had in mind when I was coming to this location, but I saw this tree, and this is a really photogenic tree. I've seen quite a lot of shots of this area where you have a lone tree and you have Slioch, and to be quite frank, a lot of them just become a little bit samey. They don't interest me that much, and that's maybe one of the reasons why I've not come down here and done many of those sorts of shots before. But this image here, I went for something slightly different, so I've gone for a portrait orientation, and I've put a wide angle lens on as well. So we'll see whether this turns out okay. I'm slightly worried that it might be a little bit too busy, and also because I've gone for a wide angle lens, of course the issue with that always when you have a mountain in the background is those mountains can look a little bit too small when you've got that sort of focal range. But I've had a look at a couple of shots on the back of the camera, and I think it might work, so we'll see how it goes. But just to sort of talk you through the composition, what I've got is there's a little bit of stone here in the foreground, and to be honest it's not that interesting a rock. So I'm not sort of focusing on the rock as such, it's just providing something down in the bottom of the frame that might provide a little bit of interest. I've got a polarizing filter on there as well, because I've got a little bit of a puddle right here in the foreground, which has got a little bit of surface glare, so the polarizer is just taking that off a little bit. But the main sort of part of the image really is this tree, and the reason I've got the camera down so low is because rather than having one of those stereotypical shots with the mountain and the tree, what I've done is I've switched, by putting the camera down low, I've managed to get it so that the mountain is sitting just below the branch. You can see this branch here, which is curving over. The mountain is sat below that. And I just found that quite pleasing. So after taking a little bit of a wander around and having the camera off the tripod, just having a little bit of a play, that was just one of the things which struck me as being quite a pleasing image potentially. So yeah, we'll see. So I have actually just recomposed this ever so slightly. It probably doesn't look like I've moved the tripod, but I have actually moved the tripod slightly to the right hand side, and I've gone into a landscape orientation. And actually I think this works quite nicely too. Very similar idea where I've got the tree on the left hand third, and then it's just framing that mountain. The mountain is just sitting below those branches. And I think it's quite a pleasing composition, and although we don't have much colour in the sky at the moment, we do have quite nice clouds up there, so although there's a little bit of blue, and I'm not a big fan of blue sky, I do actually think that this image works quite nicely. There's some absolutely gorgeous light hitting Loch now. The sun is just about to rise over there, and it's just beautiful. And this is just one of those shots where you've got to just stick the long lens on, point it at the pretty thing, and take a shot. It's just beautiful. So this image, I think, really is probably more of a recce shot. This was actually the spot which I had in mind when I came down to this area. This was the bit which I wanted to come and have a bit of a scout out of, and it is nice. I'm finding it's a little bit busy for me, to be honest. There's quite a lot going on in this composition. There's a few sort of scraggly bushes down here in the bottom which I think are causing a very slight distraction in the image, and I've tried a few different angles. I've moved around, I've gone left, right, tried out a few different things, and I think going slightly wider to make sure we get both of these trees in. If I just move my head, there's two trees there, and initially I was thinking if I just have one tree on the right hand side that would work best, but actually I think having both trees in frame works nicely. The issue with doing that is you then get a lot of these sort of dead, scraggly bits down the bottom. So it's been one of those sort of trying to force it a little bit compositions, and also the conditions aren't quite right. So I've taken an image anyway. If I pop it up, I'll pop it up, and you can let me know what you think of it. This I think is more of a recce shot because I think we've lost the light on the mountain now. The sky's not particularly interesting, but there might be some potential here for an image. So. We'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments below anyway. So I feel like this morning has gone well. I've really enjoyed getting out this morning, coming down, exploring this little area which I've not been familiar with before. And I might even have one or two images which are quite nice, and actually probably a bit better than the images that I thought I was going to get this morning. And I think that's the main thing with landscape photography, is getting out there and enjoying the landscape, and that always has to come first. Now, some of you may be aware that I am part of a podcast called the Pubcast. We're kind of a YouTube / podcast thing, so you can either listen to us as a podcast or you can watch our videos online as well. And last week we had a guest on the Pubcast, and that was Mark Littlejohn, who's a local photographer to me. He lives up near Gairloch, and it was really nice to have Mark on, and we had a really interesting chat about, I guess, the secret to good landscape photography, and anyone who knows Mark's work will know that Mark knows what he's talking about. And it was a really good chat, and I think often this is one of the things which I found when speaking to people about landscape photography is, particularly early on, a lot of people can get very het up on the composition, maybe locations, visiting set locations, and all the technical side of things, and sometimes that really just gets in the way. To be honest, the technical side of landscape photography isn't complicated. There's a few basic things you have to learn when you first get starting out, but it's not really that complicated, and once you've got it, it's best just to have it there as deep knowledge that you know you can use, and it's just sort of semi-automatic. The main thing with landscape photography really is having a love for the landscape, and if you have that love for the landscape initially, then the photography will develop as a result of that. And that was one of the things which we discussed, and I think it was a really good point, and it's one of the things which I have always had a very strong love for the landscape. My love for the landscape came before my love for photography. I got into photography, particularly landscape photography, because I'd always had that love of being in the outdoors, coming to places like this. I grew up in northwest Scotland, so it was kind of always in my blood. And for me still, landscape photography is still secondary. Most times I go out, yes, there's an aim to get an image, but actually, and this is one of the things that which we discussed on the Pubcast. Actually, the best images I find come from reacting to very spontaneous and transient conditions, whether that's a shaft of light or a rain shower coming through. These are the things which make good landscape photographs, not just coming and trying to replicate another image which someone else has already taken. Because for me, photography is about capturing transient moments in time, something which may not happen again. So whether that's a fleeting rainbow or a little bit of light catching a shower as it comes down. A lot of my favourite images are those sorts of images which are just very quick reactions to conditions as they happen, because the photography then is capturing that moment and it's capturing the spirit of that moment. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was a really interesting discussion that we had on the Pubcast. I'll leave a link, by the way, to the video at the end of this video, so if you're not already subscribed to the Pubcast, you can go and have a listen to it. Anyway, I'll leave this video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.